The worst thing about remembering something nobody else remembers isn't that you're wrong. It's that over time, you begin to suspect the world is rearranging itself, so you forget, too. There was a box on my porch the day I came back, weathered cardboard, tied with a fraying shoelace, the kind of box that smells like old paper and afternoons gone soft at the edges. Inside were trophies that had lost their shine, a half-deflated rubber ball, a red crayon stub, and a stack of drawings. Houses with crooked chimneys, stick figure families holding hands, and a solitary figure always standing a little apart, always shaded in with darker stroke, always labeled with a name I had said aloud so many times I could have whispered it in my sleep. Noah. I said the name out loud in the empty kitchen, and it felt like dropping a pebble into a dark well. It didn't echo. The house didn't answer. The rooms that had once been bright with the small, persistent noise of two children were quiet in that stripped way old houses get when no one visits them for a long time. My father had died 3 weeks earlier. The estate lawyers had been thorough. The house was mine now, but the rooms were full of other people's absences. I kept the drawings on the kitchen table. The sunlight through the dirty curtains drew lines across them. The dark-skinned figure in every picture seemed to move from shadow into shadow depending on the light. I ran my thumb over a line where a small hand had scribbled, Noah, best friend. Ink caught under my nail like something tiny and stubborn, refusing to be wiped away. That night, I dreamed in the way you dream when a house remembers you. The hallway at the end of the second floor was longer than I remembered. The wallpaper a pale pattern of birds that seemed to look sideways when I walked past. A child's laughter, not sharp or bright, but patient, echoed down the hall. I woke with the sound stuck behind my ribs, a small rhythm I couldn't place. The next morning, I asked my mother about Noah. She turned the question into a joke. To protect me, she said. She smiled like someone smoothing a crease that didn't belong. Everybody had an imaginary friend, she said, as if that explained anything. You used to talk to someone who lived in the backyard fence. You outgrew him. Her smile had the soft, automatic quality of someone who has been asked the same thing too many times. My father had the same line, carved into an older laugh, a return to habit. Imaginary friends, he said, handing me a cup of tea. They're harmless. But the drawings were signed, big, clumsy letters on the back page. From Noah. The handwriting was unfussy, the way a child writes when they're certain of something. The name wasn't my childish loop of letters. It felt, to my chest, like proof. I drove to my old elementary school on a whim. It was a rainy Tuesday, and the playground was slick with a thin, shining film. The school smelled the way schools do, dust and disinfectant and the faint, ever-present tang of paper glue. The janitor, a man I remembered only as Mr. Alvarez from an older brown photograph, let me into the office after I told him my name. He thumbed through the school register without looking. His fingers were slow and sure, a machine that had been wound for years. What's your last name? He asked. I told him. He blinked, then squinted at the ledger as if the ink might rearrange itself. He coughed and said softly, we kept records back then, but he stopped. He ran his finger down the list and then up again as if retracing a path he'd lost. You were a day student, he said. Or he stopped again, shaking his head. There's no record of me. My think was thin and high in my ears. I laughed, an animal sound that didn't belong to my voice. That's impossible. He led me to the class photograph pinned to the wall, a grid of small faces, each one smiling in that brittle way children do for cameras. I knew those faces. The girl with the crooked front tooth, the boy who always had his hand in his pocket, the teacher with the beaded necklace. There was an empty space in the third row between two laughing kids, not a person, but a lighter patch of background, the kind of blank that happens when a photograph is damaged and the paper bleaching has left a gap. Someone had torn out a face there once. A rectangle of old glue outlined the absence. Next to it, the caption had been carefully re-lettered. Sometimes, Mr. Alvarez said, eyes not meeting mine. We had to, he swallowed. If a child left suddenly, or if he traced the rectangle with the back of his pen, like a man outlining something that must be left unspoken. His face looked like a hinge. I brought the class photo home and sat with it under the lamp until the room wore night around the edges. I held the image to the window, and the hole in the photo swallowed the streetlights into a black that was deeper than ordinary shadow. I pressed my finger to the missing square, and my skin prickled as if the hole had its own coldness. The strange little things gathered like pebbles in a child's pocket. Under the floorboards of the den, once a den, now museum of our faded belonging, I found a crayon drawing of a house with 2 chimneys and 2 swings. There were faint fingerprints in the dust along the sill, as if a small hand had rested there recently. My phone would ring sometimes with a number I didn't recognize, and then click into static when I answered. At night, the hallway lamp would flicker in a slow, regular pattern, 3 pulses, then 5, like someone counting in the dark. Once I found a VHS tape in the attic, labeled, in the same childish scrawl, Sam and Noah, Playdate. I pushed the tape into the ancient player, and the TV spat an image that made the air go cold. An empty backyard swing moving gently in the wind. No child appeared on the tape. The lens hovered on the swing, on a patch of ground where footprints should have been, and then it cut to a close-up of the window where my mother claimed Noah had never been visible. On that taped glass, someone had scratched letters small and frantic. Remember me. I began to test reality in desperate, childish ways. I asked neighbors, Mrs. Patel from across the lane, who had taught Nate to whistle, Mr. Jensen, who sold comic books about a skinny boy named Noah who wore rain boots with dinosaurs on them. Nobody remembered. At best, they smiled with that blandness of people who know childhood is a fiction that rearranges itself. Imaginary, they suggested. All kids do it. I felt the word like a bruise. The town's silence became a thing at my heels. I would talk to my empty kitchen, and the house would answer with the clink of a mug, a cupboard door closing. I would call the name Noah in the middle of the night, and something patient and small would tap at the inside of the window pane as if testing the glass. Then the handwriting arrived in a way that couldn't be mistaken for my own memory. A thin, childish scrawl on a sheet of paper left on my pillow. Don't let them take me. The letters slanted in a hurry, like someone writing while hiding. There was no signature. My hands shook so badly when I picked it up. The ink smeared. I confronted my mother. Who left this? I demanded, the paper between my fingers like a white flag. Her eyes went wide and then closed, her fingers closing on my wrist with a force I hadn't felt since I was small. You know how memory plays itself out, Sam, she said. Oh, honey, you used to. She looked away, toward the living room, where a quiet television muttered images into nothing. There was a time you would wake up and tell us, Noah says the wall are hungry. We put him down to help you through a fear. I remember more than a fear, I said. I remember being two people. Maybe you were, she said softly, and then she smiled the way people do when they've rehearsed a lie for years until it becomes a truth. You made someone so real, you convinced yourself. That night, the lamps went out on their own. I sat in the circle of light from my phone, and the house filled with a small, wet sound. The tug of someone tearing paper. The smell of crayons turned metallic on the air. Something breathed against the back of my neck, and a child's whisper ticked into my ear. Don't let them take me. I ran to the attic. The ladder scraped like a fingernail. There, in the chest, behind the moth-eaten coats, was a small wooden box I had never noticed before. Inside were tiny things. A matchbox car with blue chipped paint, a plastic dinosaur missing its tail, and a photograph with one face carefully cut out. The photograph had been pressed flat with careful fingers. The empty space, where the child's face should have been, was smooth, as if someone had sliced a piece of the world away. Beneath the photo, in a corner no adult had touched in decades, there was a paper folded in quarters. I opened it. On the inside was a list, names, dates. Beside many names, someone had written a word. Gone, moved, sick. Beside one line, a line with my own name that I'd read 1,000 times without seeing. Someone had typed a single different word. Replace. My mouth went dry. The attic spun. I read the list again until the letters multiplied. The handwriting at the bottom was different, hasty and small. He came back. He remembers me. Take care. 3 nights later, the phone call came. A voice I'd known since childhood spoke in a paper-thin whisper that made my bones ache. Sam, it said, there's someone at the gate. He wants to come in. The line went dead. I looked in the hallway. The front door stood closed, a band of moonlight slicing across it. I opened it. On the porch, a small handprint had been left in the dust on the step. The fingers splayed like a child's press of ownership. There was a stick laid gently beside it. No footprints led away. The air smelled of rain that hadn't fallen. I felt the world shift, like a page being turned. In the mirror that evening, as I brushed my teeth with hands that trembled, my reflection looked back, and for a breath, a single, sharp inch of time, the left side of my face shimmered, as if the photograph of me were fading in a place no one else had seen. I reached up and touched my temple. My fingers came away as if smeared, as if someone had tried to rub my name off the world. The climax came like a door flung open. I found the school basement by accident, following a pattern on the old bricks where paint had peeled in the shape of an arrow. There, under the folding chairs and the rusted trophy case, was a low room that smelled of mildew and closed-up things. At the center sat a child's desk, tiny and lacquered, with a name tag on the front. Noah. The label had been carefully affixed, and someone, a small, careful hand, had carved a second name beneath it, and then sanded it smooth. The second name had been erased so completely the wood still held the abrasion of it, like a scar. I could make out the curve of a capital S if I squinted. I turned the desk over. Inside, taped under the lip where small hands could reach, there was a sheet of paper folded at the edges. I unfolded it and read, and the words were simple, written in letters that shook. They will take him if he is alone. You must sit in his seat. You must say his name aloud every day. You must tell stories so he will not be hungry. My breath left me in a small, clean sound. The desk felt suddenly like a trap. I understood everything I had been seeing, the empty photographs, the erased records, the polite amnesia of a town that preferred certain gaps. They had a way of keeping death from looking like death. They made room. They called it moving on. They gave a child a name to hold and, in exchange, asked that a living thing make a small, soft place for absence to be fed. Someone had taught me to keep a seat warm for a thing that could not be spoken of. Someone had told me to remember. Then the second line of the note, the one scratched beneath the first, smacked me cold enough to drown. The letters were jagged now, as if written by an adult hand in a hurry. If you remember too well, he will want to take that memory. He eats names. I remember how it felt to hear the last syllable. The word settled into my chest and made a soft, insistent ache. To be eaten by forgetting. To be polite and small as the town erased you line by line until no ledger held your name and no photograph fit your face. The town had fed the empty thing enough to grow. It did not want witnesses. I ran. I carried the desk out like contraband. The house smelled of 1,000 small erasures. The drawings on the kitchen table lay open like a pleading. I held them up to the light, and in the corner of one drawing, half hidden behind the roof of a house, some child, maybe Noah, maybe myself, had penciled words I had not seen. Don't let them take him. Tell my name. I shouted it into the rooms, into the hollow spaces where years had laid their dust. Noah, I said, so loud the word cracked like ice. I said it again and again until the syllables were raw. Outside, the streetlight flickered and the swing in the yard began to move as though pushed by an unseen hand. And then, in the sudden still between the pulses, my name slipped free of the mouths of every neighbor who might have known it. I called for my mother, and the house answered with a photograph that had been folded into a box of the kind you send from someone you've lost. A photograph where faces were softened by time. I found my parents' wedding portrait with the same strange smoothing across the place where my handle of a name should be. My voice echoed and came back thin. The twist lodged like a thorn. The friend who had never existed was a method, and I had been the keeper. They had taught children to make places for other things so grief could be swallowed. A small kindness turned monstrous by time. The friend, the absence, fed on attention until it could step into the light. It ate names to grow its edges sharper. I had fed it words by calling, by keeping a seat warm. I had been an unwitting guardian of a thing that wanted more than empty spaces. You can give a thing your voice, and one day it will ask for your name. I learned that too late. In the days after the attic note, things began to slip in degrees. A neighbor would ask me for my help and forget my face mid-sentence. My email stopped returning replies. My bank's letter had arrived that morning, an automated thing about account verification. When I tried the password, the site said no account existed. I went to the hospital to see the file from my birth, and the records clerk smiled at me with a practiced sympathy and said, "We have no birth registered under that name." I tried to hold on by telling stories. I told Noah's stories to anyone who would listen about the dinosaur rain boot, the secret passage behind the shed, the way he laughed when he found a slug and put it on my head. I told the stories loudly, like a plea. For a while, it worked. People nodded, their faces soft with the small charity of someone indulging the past. But each time I pulled a memory, some small piece of me thinned. At first, it was a scar that didn't hurt, then a freckle, then the echo of my laugh. Memory is a tax. Paying it to a hungry absence takes something from you until you are lighter than you were. The last night, I sat on the front step with a drawing in my lap and watched the swing move by itself under the sycamore. Somebody, or something, had rearranged the streetlights so the light pooled like a stage. A child's voice, so close I felt breath on my cheek, said, "I missed you." I turned. Nothing but the dark. The leaves made a soft rubbing noise, like pages being turned. I opened my mouth to speak my name, to anchor myself in sound. The word came out small and foreign, as if someone else had borrowed my tongue. They will ask you to make room for things, the town had taught me. They will show you the empty chair and ask that you sit. They will praise your generosity for keeping it warm, but generosity has a ledger. For every name you say for another, some other account is closed. I felt my name becoming a delicacy in the air, and I understood how the absence eats. I said the name of Noah again, because that was the only defense I could think of, an act of naming as a tether. Noah, I said, Noah, don't. The swing stopped. The silhouette on the porch was a thin, white shape, the way a photograph goes when you hold it too close to light. It wasn't a boy, not really, but a shape of a thing that had been kept alive by being called. It looked taller than the drawing suggested, and for an instant, a single, bizarre, human second, its face was mine, or mine was its, and all the lines between us blurred. Then it smiled in the way that something without a throat can smile, patient and small. "Thank you," it said, and the voice had no name to it, only a hunger that had been fed. The world felt like a page being smoothed flat. I ran into the house and banged all the doors shut. I tried to write my name on the mirror with lipstick to leave a proof in red that the letters had been there. I screamed my name until my voice shook, until my throat felt raw and phlegmy. Outside, the wind picked up and the swings set themselves back in motion, rhythm steady as a heart. In the morning, there was a paper left on the kitchen table. "Thank you for keeping the seat warm. It will not be hungry anymore." No signature. The drawings on the table had been rearranged into neat piles, one for each year, each with Noah shaded darker than the rest. I packed a bag with the smallest things that defined me. A university acceptance letter I had framed and taken down years ago. A Polaroid of a boy with a chipped tooth. A student ID that, when I later tried to scan it, read nothing. I put the box on the back seat of my car and drove. Across town, the schoolyard was empty, the holes in the photographs smoothed with time. I kept saying my name as I drove because saying it felt like ballast. When I reached the edge of town, and turned to look back. The house sat like a small tooth in the hill, front porch soaked with yesterday's rain. The swing was still. The world around it was punctual and ordinary. No one waved. The town was the same town, incapable of malice, but hungry for quiet, steady in its forgetting. I drove until my phone battery dropped into the red. I pulled over at a rest stop and checked my email one last time. There, a message from a number I did not recognize. The subject line read, "For keeping him company." The body was empty, except for one line, "You remembered me, and for that I will always be grateful." Below it, in a font that looked like handwriting, someone had typed my name. I touched the letters on the screen and felt a blankness sweep my chest, as if someone had flicked a page. My fingers went through the shape of my name, as if the world had decided it was no longer solid. If you listen closely to the small town, you can hear them teaching you that kindness and memory are the same thing. They teach that making room for absence is noble. They teach the children to tell stories at supper so the empty chair won't eat. But the lesson has a cost. One sum will not pay until it's too late. This was today's tale from TalesHub. If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying tales. And remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones closest to reality.